Since Alex Hormozi joined Skool, the platform has been increasingly popular for businesses looking to create courses and communities. But after building Skool communities for numerous different coaches, consultants, and course creators, we started using an alternative software that resulted in our clients' members continuing to pay their subscriptions for even longer. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through this software and compare it to Skool so you can then see the platform that has been generating our clients even more members for their communities. If you aren't familiar with Skool already, it is a platform that allows businesses to create courses and communities for them to sell their skills. The reason it works so well is it allows a business to create a product once and sell it as many times as possible. But the biggest benefit is it practically involves no money down and the running cost is incredibly low. So let's say, as an example, you're selling a service on a one-on-one done for you level right now. You will essentially have a cap to the number of clients that you can work with. And even if you have the best systems and automations in the world, no matter how good they are, you will still have a cap to the number of clients that you can onboard in one time. And the only way that you can then continue to grow more is to develop your systems and automations even more and to hire more staff members. And when it comes to hiring more staff members, this means that your profit margin potentially drops and there's more moving parts and more operational drag inside your business. Instead, you could launch a community and a course that allows you to create a product once and sell it to as many clients as possible. Essentially, if you sold one client or 1,000 clients, the deliverables wouldn't change. And using these systems and automations that I'm about to walk you through, you'll still be able to get the same results on a one-to-many level as if you were delivering your product or service on a one-on-one level. So if I was to launch a community or a course, this is the method that I would follow to ensure that I sign the maximum number of clients and retain these clients for the longest period of time possible.
Now, the first point to really consider that will hold you back if you go with the Skool model is the ability to integrate this with other platforms and then the need to have to pay for numerous different subscriptions. So chances are, if you're going to run a Skool community, you're probably going to need the sales process to sell them into it. If your Skool community is a lower ticket product, potentially you can get away with pushing people into a funnel that sells them, then into buying Skool. Or if you're essentially going with a higher ticket option, potentially you'll need a whole sales process before that, where you'll need Calendly, you'll need inquiry forms, and you'll essentially need to sell people on a call into your community. Now, in order to do that, you'll essentially need 4 main softwares at minimum. The first one, obviously, being Skool. Skool essentially charge $99 a month, but that gives you one group. If you then want to add in another group and another group, you'll have to pay for that. So potentially you might want a free community and then a paid community. The free community can be your free community where you essentially nurture people, you then upsell them into your paid community. You then have to pay twice for that. And then the additional fee of essentially the transaction fee. So even though you're processing payments through Stripe take a fee, then Skool take a fee on top of that. It just massively cuts into your cost for essentially nothing. Then alongside that, you'll need a software to essentially be your funnel, something that you can use to sell people into the offer. The Skool sort of discover a community page when we click on it. So for example, if we clicked on this, you'll then see that, yes, this gives you some overview and it gives you some text, but it's not really enough to sell you into something, especially not if you're going to essentially charge higher prices. So you probably want a sales page instead of that. And in order to have a sales page, the main software that's generally used is ClickFunnels. ClickFunnels, pricing wise, they have a couple of different sort of tiers. If you went monthly, you're then looking at another £100 or even £300. But then you need a software to essentially collect emails and potentially send out emails, because the big thing with a community and a course is if it's more hands-off, you need ways to re-engage and constantly engage community members. So sending out emails is a great tool. An ActiveCampaign is probably the biggest provider for that. But the thing when we look at ActiveCampaign is, again, the cost that rises as you have more contacts. So let's say the minimum being 1,000 contacts. If you had 1,000 people in your community, even if you're charging a small fee, that's still a decent base of income. But even on the starter level, it's an additional $15 there. So the cost then rises, but then you have to essentially pair them all together, because we want that process to be seamless. We want people to land on a funnel. We want them to pay direct into Stripe, or we want them to go into a sales call. We then want to give them access to Skool. We then want to put them in an email sequence. And to do that, we essentially would use something like Zapier. Now, Zapier is essentially a tool that connects all of these together. So you think about it, you'd have Skool, you'd have ClickFunnels, you'd have ActiveCampaign, and we need something that pulls this together as like the hub that automates these processes to make it seamless. It means that it's frictionless for clients. So the onboarding process is seamless. So there's not going to be a huge amount of buyer's remorse and refund requests. And it then takes you out of having to do it all manually. And when we look at Zapier, again, the cost rises as you grow. So the free plan's fine to start with, but you can only have what are called two-step zaps. You can have a trigger and then an action. So for example, someone opts in or pays, they get added to Skool, but then you can't trigger anything else off the back of that. And that only allows you to essentially automate about 50 tasks a month if it's two-step. Whereas if we then want to automate, say 100 tasks a month, you can see this starts at 750. So essentially a minimum of £24. So all in all, you're essentially paying £300 to £500 minimum probably for this model to run. And this is essentially the way that you would connect it in, and I'll show you inside Zapier. So inside Zapier, we can create what are called zaps. They're essentially automations. And we can put in this what is called a trigger that triggers the automation. Off the back of this trigger, so for example, someone paying, someone opting in, we can perform an action and we can perform a series of actions, such as adding people to Skool, adding people to a list and active campaign, whatever that outcome is that we want. So as the trigger, you'll see when you click on trigger, you have a long list of different options. If you're using ClickFunnels, you can then use ClickFunnels. You can click here, you can then connect your account and you can choose a trigger. These triggers can be when a new contact has activity on them, when there's a failed purchase, a successful purchase. So for example, if you're doing a low ticket option, even if you were doing a higher ticket option, you're still selling people on a call and taking a payment through ClickFunnels, you can do when there's a successful purchase. You can follow through, connect your account and follow through the steps. That will then essentially trigger when someone puts a successful payment through. So someone pays, what do we want to happen? Well, we then want to grant them access to Skool. And if we select Skool, we can invite a member. The problem with the Skool model here is what this means is this then essentially causes you to have all your groups as a certain private setting. You can't then put them all as public. You can't then put them all as drip mode. Skool limits that because that's the only way that they allow the integration to happen. Because you'll notice when you connect and you go through it, then asks you to select what courses you want to give them access to, and it will only show you private ones. But then alongside this, we can add in a step called ActiveCampaign, and then ActiveCampaign, we can create or update a contact. So down here, we can then scroll down and we can create or update a contact. And again, we can connect and follow through the steps. But the problem with all of this is this gets around the need for paying the Skool transaction fee. It gets around the aspect of having the Skool landing page, you get your own landing page. But the problem with this is the points that I mentioned before, and also the fact that because payments external to Skool, it means that we can't automatically remove people when their payments bounce. And what this then also means is inside Skool, we can't then also set up an automation to do that because they only give us two options to automate: invite a member or unlock a course, which is super limited. So that's a reason why we essentially use this platform instead, which I'm going to show you. And this is how you can automate the whole process ridiculously seamlessly. Systemize to Scale is essentially our all-in-one sales and marketing platform that we've created to essentially remove all of the need for these other subscriptions and bring one centralized software subscription that does all of these tasks in one place at a fraction of the cost, but at a much simpler process because you're not needing to connect all these different softwares. And the benefit with this is there's one flat fee for it. And as your business grows, you're not having to pay extra. The subscription is the same regardless if you have 20 clients, you have 20,000 clients. Now inside here, the cool thing with this is you're not then having to use all these different softwares to perform these tasks. This software will do all of that for you. So the first step is to essentially come into membership sites. And what you'll see here is we can then essentially create courses and communities. Now, communities are essentially like the Skool community that we saw. And we can essentially come in and we can create a community. Now in these communities, this is a test one. So if we log into this, you'll see what I mean as an example here. What you'll then notice as well is when you set this up yourself, you can then obviously change the domain. So the domain is obviously your business domain. That's another thing with Skool, is it's always the Skool domain, whereas here you can put your own domain. So if we had one, we could put systemizedtoscale.com, for example. And now what we can do is we can then come in, and you'll see it's very, very similar to Skool. We can create channels down the side. We can then create courses that are here that they can then work through. This then gives you an overview of the members. This then essentially allows us to create a calendar. So we can then create events on here, and we can then have these laid out on the calendar just like the classroom feature in Skool, so that people can join these live calls. This then also automatically sends out email reminders before. That's one limitation with Skool, is they don't do that, whereas this automatically sends out email reminders before, and obviously that can be toggled on and off. Then the leaderboard aspect, and the big thing with this leaderboard is we can create automations off the back of this when people move up and down different levels. So if you're then noticing that people's leaderboard score is going down and down and down and down, we can have a whole reactivation sequence to reactivate them to start pushing their engagement back up. This is really big for a product which is hands-off, like something like this, because it's not done with the client. Generally, a course and a community model is the goal of this is to have an infinitely scalable product. This isn't then done on a one-on-one level with the client. We want all the systems in place to then give the same support, but then make sure that these clients are engaging. So we can do all of that. Then about this is then just an overview of about the course. And the cool thing with this is essentially the same as that initial page that I showed you from Skool, where you can then have an overview of your product and then the price. This can then essentially be ranked on the Go Collab marketplace. It's been endorsed by people like Tony Robbins, all of these big names, and there's millions and millions of different courses on there. So it's essentially the same process as Skool. The more people who are engaging in your Systemized to Scale community, the higher you rank on that marketplace, more people then will find you and your course. But then the cool thing with this is the whole goal of this is to create full customization. So we can then create an app version of this for your course and membership site, your community, and that can be branded for you and your business. So then it means that people who sign up to you have the app version that's your own branding. You're not then looking like you're pushing people off onto a third-party software. It looks like your own app. And inside your community, we can go into settings, we can go into branding, we can add in your obviously logos and things like that, but we can then also add in themes. But then with the themes, you can create custom themes, so you can fully customize the colors of the essentially the site here. Then it means it's super personalized. But a big thing with this is the whole gamification process. So you'll notice in the platform, if we come here and we go into settings, we can then essentially set up emails. So if we come back, we can go to emails. We can then set up emails based off certain outcomes. So for example, we can set up a custom email. We can add in our own template when people join, when they get approved or declined, when people get tagged, when people's role changes. We can set up all these customized emails to gamify the whole process even more. But a big thing with this is we can then feed this straight into an automation, and we can create a workflow. And what we can do in here is we can then create a workflow based off when people's leaderboard score goes up and down. So for example, as the trigger, we can then put community. And what we can then do is we can do community group leaderboard. We can select the community. Here is the test one that we created. And we can then select when their level is a certain level. So when they're changing between these different levels, let's say when they're level 1, we can then have a whole sequence to maybe send out emails or even send out texts or WhatsApps to really reactivate these leads. And the goal with this is then it allows you to be even more hands-off, but the product is delivered even more hands-on. And then alongside this, what we can then also do is we can build out the actual courses so they're super personalized. So what you'll then notice inside membership sites, we can go to courses and we can create products. We can then create courses that are then linked into your community. So if you're familiar with softwares like Kajabi and things, so if we went into this test one, what you'll then notice in here is we can then essentially create courses and we can add different categories, and then the courses are essentially like a Kajabi course all within your one community. So when people click on learning, they have all your different courses here that they can then work through. But a big point here to hammer home is the fact that all your automations are in one place, your community is in one place, your courses are in one place, and then also your funnels and websites are in one place. So what we can then essentially do is we can create a funnel. We can use one of the templates that we have, or we can even use our AI feature that will custom build your funnel in 30 seconds, and then obviously you can tweak it. But let's say we went from blank and we just put test in. What we can then do is we can create the funnel. And in this funnel, it's essentially the same as ClickFunnels, the drag and drop type layout. So we can add a step, and let's say we call this test, we just put test in. And if you're using ClickFunnels, the whole goal of our platform is essentially to allow you to transition into it really smoothly. So you can even import your ClickFunnels links and it will just automatically replicate those in the platform for you. So that transition is super smooth and super easy. But let's say we created the funnel step, and then let's say we created from blank. You'll then notice in the platform, it's super simple. And if you're familiar with ClickFunnels, it's essentially the same thing. We can add rows, we can add columns, we can add elements. And it's the whole drag and drop. We can edit the text, and then we can add in more headlines down here. So it's the same layout, headlines, videos, images. It's the same layout as ClickFunnels, and we can build out your funnels. Then what this means is we can link this in to Stripe, and we can then essentially have all your transactions going through Stripe like normal. But the big thing with this one is it's just a payment gateway. So the benefit with this is there's no additional fees. Stripe take their fees like normal, but there's no additional fees like Skool. So it means that the cost is way lower for you, and it's one subscription, less than all these other subscriptions, but it does even more, and it allows you to provide even more value in your community without having to do everything manually. So that's essentially where we're now building our communities. And if you want to hear more, drop a comment below, and obviously I'll happily run you through essentially how you can implement this process in your business and how it will allow you to sign more clients, engage those clients even more, and then eventually upsell those clients into an ascension model where they'll spend even more with you in your business.